button and turn notification bell so that whenever I drop a video, you'll be the first one to be notified, guys. So today we are going to talk about how to analyze the market, right? We're going to talk about how to analyze the market. So how do I start up my week, right? You guys know I over here we do trade both swing trade and day trades, right? We trade on what is a day trade and what is a swing trade. Day trade simply means short term trades, right? And swing trade simply means a long term trade. Probably hold the trades for a couple of days, but as for the trade, the same day you open your trade, that very day you have to close your trade, right? So this video is purposely based on a swing trade, right. So how do I start out my week? I start my analysis on the daily time frame, right? I start my analysis on a daily, probably on the weekly time frame, right? Sometimes you can even go on the monthly time frame, right? Sometimes you can even go on the monthly time frame to see the overall picture of the market, right? To see the overall picture of the market. So you can see this is a GBP CHF, guys. You can see for a couple of about 2 to 3 years now, right? This market has been ranging, guys. This market has been ranging on the monthly time frame. So you can see it with support and resistance zone, right? You can see it over here. The market has been ranging, right? The market has been ranging between that very price and this very price over here. So you can see the market has been ranging. So we have identified here to be our resistance zone and this bottom line over here to be our support zone, guys. So what we are going to do is we are on monthly time frame, right? So we are going to narrow down on the weekly time frame. That this is what we call top down analysis. Top down analysis simply means starting from the high time frames down to the lower time frames, right? Starting from the high time frame down to the lower time frame, you can see we are now on the weekly time frame. So on the weekly time frame, let us pick up things very clear over here. This happens to be our monthly resistance zone, right? And this zone still happens to be our, that's it, monthly support zone, right? Monthly support zone over here. So guys, you can see whenever there is a drop, we will be expecting pullback before the market to continue to its initial trend, right? Something like this. When you see something like this, there's something move to the downward like this or low like this, then we expect lower high, then we expect lower low, lower high, lower low, right? So that's simply what we call market structure, right? So you can see we are now on the weekly time frame. So over here the market has printed this low over here, right? And we use Fibonacci to measure everything over here is what we call retracement, right? Everything over here is what we call retracement. So we simply use Fibonacci to measure our retracement over here, right? So simply like this, measure our retracement zone over here. You can see the market has retraced all the way from 0.78, right, before the push to the downside began, right? So right now we had another impulse to the downside. This is the correction phase. So what are we going to do? We are going to simply pick our Fibonacci level to put it at the recent high to the recent low, right over here, right, to the recent low. So what are we going to do? We can see the market has retraced all the way to 0.61, right? To 0.61. The market is currently pushing to the downside. So you can see on the weekly time frame right now, we are expecting this market to push to the downside. And remember, trading, we can't use what we combine on what we call confluences, right? We can't use one confluence. What is confluence? Confluence simply means reasons for taking actions, right? So you can see we have resistance, support, then resistance over here, guys. This whole zone happens to be support and resistance zone. So simply on the weekly time frame, we are expecting this market to push all the way to this very price, right? The market to push all the way to this very price, to here, right? So that is it for the weekly time frame. If Now we will now get down on the daily time frame, right? We now get down on the daily time frame. So on the daily time frame, what are we expecting over here, right? What are we expecting over here? So on the daily time frame, here happens to be our weekly zone, right? So on the daily time frame, let's take out this zone over here, right? So on the daily time frame, we notice the market has been giving us this pattern, right? This is what we call the bearish flag, or probably this is what we call the bearish flag. As for me, we over here, we don't actually rely on chart patterns, right? We don't actually rely on chart patterns, but it's what we call a bearish flag. This is drop, this is the consolidation phase. So we are expecting this market to push all the way to the downside, right? And you can see today is already today is Friday, right? So we are expecting, we will watch out how this market is going to behave next week. So on the daily time frame, let us simply identify the support and resistance zones for the daily time frame, right? So you can see this market has been bouncing off from this support zone over here, one, two, and the third round the market has already finally broken to the downside. So what are we expecting? We're expecting this market to break and retest. So this is the retest phase. After the retest, we are expecting this market to push to the downside, right? So on the daily time frame, we'll be able to identify here to be our what, we'll be able to identify impulse correction. So this is the correction phase. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to measure this correction over here. You can simply see this trend line over here, first touch, second touch, this is the third touch. So maybe upon this movement to the upside, the market is going to give the what we call the fourth touch, right? So we're still expecting this market to push to the downside, but you can tell we don't actually rely on chart patterns and trend lines, right? That's how we trade. But so we can now narrow down the 4 hour time frame to look for our entries, right? We can now narrow down the 4 hour time frame to look for our entries. So in the 4 hour time frame, this is what the market is doing. We're expecting the market to push all the way to maybe here, drop from here, or 61.8 or 78, then we see push to the downside, something like this. So let us watch out how this market is going to play out next week. That's the end of this video. Can you please hit the subscribe button, turn notification bell, so that whenever I drop a video, you'll be the first one to be notified. Peace out.